Are you ready for a Bible story? Me too. This story is Joseph's family moves to Egypt. Genesis 45 through 50. Jacob waited and waited for his sons. How anxious he was to see them. At last they came, followed by a train of Egyptian wagons. Jacob's joy was greatest when he saw Benjamin and Simeon. At once the brothers told the good news. "We found Joseph," they exclaimed, "and he is alive and well. More than that, he is the ruler of all Egypt, and he has sent us to bring you and our wives and our children to live in Egypt." At first, Jacob could not believe their words. How could this be? But then he saw the wagons filled with presents, and he said, "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die." The third journey to Egypt was a happy one. Jacob and his sons, wives, and their little children rode in the wagons. The men drove the herds of cattle. Jacob's sons and grandchildren, 67 people, besides the mothers, who of course went too, and they made up a great company. One night, they made camp at Beersheba, where Abraham and Isaac had lived long before. Here Jacob offered sacrifices to God, and God spoke to him in a night vision. "Do not be afraid to go to Egypt, for I will go with you. I will make your family a great nation. Then I will bring that nation back to the land that I promised to Abraham and Isaac." From this time on, Jacob was called Israel, and his children were known as Israelites. At the Egyptian border, the Israelites camped again. They waited for Judah to go tell Joseph of their coming. Joseph took his royal chariot and rode to Goshen to meet his father and his relatives. What a happy meeting. Both father and son cried for joy and said many tender words. Then Joseph took 5 of his brothers and his father to see Pharaoh, the king. Pharaoh was glad to see them. When he learned that they were shepherds, he told them they could live in the land of Goshen, watered by the Nile River. Goshen was a fertile country between the river and the desert. Until the famine was over, Joseph provided food for his relatives and their cattle. After the famine, Joseph's people continued to live in Goshen. Israel was 130 years old when he left Canaan, and he lived 17 years in Goshen. Before he died, he asked his sons to take his body back to Canaan and bury it in the cave where Abraham and Isaac were buried. Then he gave each son a blessing. Joseph brought his 2 boys, Manasseh and Ephraim, to see their grandfather and to receive his blessing. Israel said, "Surely God has been good to me, for I thought I should never see your face again. Now I see you and your children." He placed his trembling, wrinkled hands upon the boy's head to bless them. His right hand was on Ephraim, the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh. "Not so, my father," Joseph said gently, trying to place his father's right hand on Manasseh's head, but Israel would not allow the change. "I know what I'm doing. Your younger son will become greater than the older. To the younger belongs the greater blessing." After Israel died, Joseph commanded the Egyptian physicians to prepare his body for burial. This took 40 days. For 70 days, the people mourned the death of Joseph's father. Then Joseph asked Pharaoh, "May I go with my brothers to bury my father in Canaan?" And Pharaoh said, "Go." When they returned, the brothers thought, "Perhaps Joseph has been kind to us only for our father's sake. Now he may treat us cruelly because we wronged him so long ago." So they sent a messenger to Joseph saying, "Before our father died, he asked you to forgive us. Please forgive us, for we are servants of the God of our father." Joseph wept when he heard this. His brothers were afraid. He sent for them and said, "Do not be afraid. Am I in God's place that I should punish you? No, I will care for you and your children as long as I live." How relieved the brothers were. Now they were sure that Joseph had forgiven them. As the years passed, Joseph's relatives grew in number until they became a great nation. Joseph was 110 years old when he knew he was about to die. He called the old men of Israel to his bedside and said, "I'm going to die, but God will watch over you. By and by he will lead you back to the land of your fathers. Do not bury me here in Egypt, but put my body in a coffin and take it with you when you return to Canaan." And the men of Israel wept as they promised. Afterwards, whenever they looked at Joseph's coffin, they remembered his words. They knew they would not always live in Egypt. They would yet be a great nation, and God would still send a Savior. That was a good story.